So, welcome to today's webinar, Hiring Strategies for Sustainable Growth. We have some special guests from Contractor Coach Pro on the call, and we'll get to their introductions in just a moment. While we're waiting on everyone to arrive and trickle in, if you are here, go ahead and jump in the chat and let us know who you are, what company you work for, where you're calling in from. And we're really interested to hear what you're hoping to learn today, or if you're struggling with something specific and feel comfortable sharing that, go ahead and let us know what it is so we can do our best to address that in the presentation. I'll go ahead and start with a quick introduction from myself. My name is Danielle Look. I'm the content marketing manager at Team Engine, where we provide software to recruit, engage, and retain your on-the-go workforce. In that role, I create tools and resources like this webinar that you see on our social media and website. So check those out if you haven't already. And also, if you have an idea for a resource that we don't yet have, I would really love to hear your thoughts and feedback. So you'll be receiving an email from me with the webinar recording later today. Feel free to reply directly to that email if you have any comments, feedback, suggestions, or ideas for me. Also, before we begin, I just wanted to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for being here today. I know how hard it is to set aside time for this kind of learning and personal development, especially when there are fires to be put out and deadlines to be met. But I'm very confident you'll find today's presentation to be worthy of your time. So thank you for being here and investing not only in yourself, but in your team. Because that's why you're here today, right? Ultimately, because you want to grow your workforce in the right way. You want to find a way to meet your short-term hiring needs, but also grow your team intentionally and to be thoughtful about the folks that you bring on in a full-time capacity. It is certainly not easy, but I can't think of a better duo to explore this topic with you today than our two guest speakers from Contractor Coach Pro. Together, they have many years of experience helping contractors and business owners solve these very problems. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to HR coach Rosalynn Verges and lead coach Nathan Tebedo to take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Danielle. Really appreciate you having us on and trusting us to jump in and say a few things to your people. Hello, everybody. Super excited to be here. One of our core values at Contractor Coach Pro are to love, serve, and care for people, as well as to master what we do and have some fun. So this is a really cool way for us to live out our core values and bringing value to you guys and trying to help you with as many of the different things as you're dealing with as possible. So I am indeed Nathan Tebedo. So we're off to a good start. And we're going to kind of approach this from two different angles. One of them is going to be a little more high level. In other words, what are some of the things we need to have in place in order to do the real practical things? And that's kind of where I'm going to jump in and start out just a little bit. Now, I'm going to move kind of quickly. And the reason is because we have limited time, and this is a massive subject, okay? A massive subject that oftentimes when I'm coaching with a client can take us weeks to flesh out some of the stuff that I'm going to attack here over a couple of minutes, but I don't want to hog all the time. I got to make sure that Rosalynn can jump in and give you guys some of the nuts and bolts of how to apply some of these things. So first things first, when at the core, the foundation of trying to create a hiring, recruiting, retention, and an HR strategy, there are some places that we need to get started. And I'm always going to end up going back to leadership every time, but I'm going to leave leadership on the shelf just a little bit today and talk a little bit more primarily about the concept of purposeful and intentional culture. Number one, culture is a buzzword. It's all over the place. And unfortunately, a lot of people just equivocate it with Taco Tuesday or a room full of beanbags. And it's a little bit more than that. Um, Purposeful and intentional culture, like I said, I'm going to kind of move quickly here. So purposeful and intentional culture is number one, identifying who you are as a company and who you want to be. So the best way I think to illustrate that is to think about you as an individual. You as an individual, the more you learn about yourself, what your strengths and weaknesses are, the more you understand what kind of things you should probably be leaning into that are going to help you to advance and grow. And some of the things that either A, you need to get rid of, or B, you need to work on, because those might be some deficiencies. And so we need to identify inside of our companies, who are we? Who exactly are we? What is our personality and our character? And then also, who do we want to be? Because just like when I look into my own self and I see some things about myself I don't like and I'd like to change, you'll probably see some of those things when you look into your company. And then the next component of being intentional and purposeful about it is we want to write it down. We don't want to just think about these things and go, that's very interesting. That is a neat component. We want to actually write that down because it becomes part of our secret sauce that becomes very, very important later on. So a lot of us think about this concept of having a brand, recruiting brand identity. Okay, this is where it starts. Okay, so if you want that thing, we got to start here. Okay, so we identify who we are, who we want to be. We write that down. And then from there, we begin to communicate and enforce/reinforce that. That's where things like bean bags and Taco Tuesday come in. Those are reinforcing or evidence of the kind of culture we have. Okay, so if you're into Mexican food, great. If you're not, you're probably not going to have a Taco Tuesday. Okay. And so we want to reinforce these things, and that comes through communicating them to our people. That's why you see companies put up big slogans and core values and things up on the wall. Excuse me. That's where you see people begin to incorporate cultural example into their reviews with their employees. Like, not only how are you doing performance-wise on the hard black and white numbers, but how well are you fitting into our culture, and are you working towards becoming more of our kind of people here? And so, like I said, moving really quickly, this becomes really, really critical when you end up working with a company like Team Engine. And so whether you're using an outside recruiter, an inside recruiter, or you're using HR tools, your partners that you use in your human resource strategy and recruiting and hiring strategies need to understand these key components about you, and you need to be able to communicate them, because I see this a lot. I love recruiters. They are very skilled and highly talented people. And so if you're looking to hire a bunch of sales professionals, a recruiter can go out and find people who are capable of being good salespeople, but are they your kind of salespeople? And so the more you understand this and the better you're able to communicate it with people like Team Engine, then the better they're able to help tailor the tools that you're using to fit your needs as a company and your personality. It's really quite critical in that area. Danielle, do you see any of that translating with your folks?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, it kind of reminds me of dating. You have to be able to articulate what you don't want in order to find what you do want, right? And you can't just wander through stacks of applications and guessing whether or not somebody's going to be a good culture fit if you can't articulate who will be a good culture fit in your company.
That's great.
I just jump in real quick too, Nathan, and add that I think one of the things that you articulated that I think is critical about this is you talked about really identifying who you are. I see so many companies out there that they're looking to these other organizations to model what their culture should be. And the reality is sometimes that leaves us kind of swimming upstream, right? And what that creates, I love your dating metaphor, Danielle, is it creates an inauthentic relationship because it's not actually who we are. It's like you can have And I want to clarify, like you can have this aspirational identity that you're working toward, and that can be authentically you. But if you're just trying to model and mimic something else that's not authentic to you because that's what you think it should be, right? Like beanbags, for example, if that actually doesn't fit your culture and your team, but you're bringing those things in because you think it's going to be good, it's actually going to feel inauthentic and it's not going to have the culture return that you're expecting. And so I just love that call out to really identify like what makes you unique, what sets your culture apart, and communicating that in part of your branding and identity as well.
Yeah.
And maybe the best way to think about it is not what makes your culture unique or your company unique, but you as the leader, as the business owner. What makes you unique as a business person, as an individual, and then leverage that and lean into that, because that's ultimately going to make a differentiator in the job market as well.
Absolutely. Yep.
Those are great call outs. And that's actually a great dovetail into the next key component in understanding why this is important and how this can help you combat what a lot of people see as a labor shortage. Because here's the thing, there's a lot of people working right now, and there's a lot of people hiring right now. So do we truly have a labor shortage? I saw a picture on social media of a room for a company that was in the midst of a recruiting season, and that room had 50 individuals looking to get a job at that place. So could you fill a room with 50, right? That's the question we got to ask ourselves. And so some of the reason why this is important is, especially like, and Danielle brought this up, as a leader, okay, how can we purposefully build a place that we want to work at? It's a true story. I had a guy, he was comfortable with the amount of money he was making. He was comfortable with his business. It was running strong. It was productive. One day he walked through the front doors of his business and realized he did not like that place. He didn't like it. And it wasn't personal. He didn't like the people that worked there. He didn't like the environment. And he had to go back and think, how I built a successful business and I don't like this thing. So how do we ensure, and that goes back to what Danielle was saying, understanding who you are and where you want to work, because you will attract to yourself people who like what you're about. And somehow this guy was able to build a successful business, probably pretending a little bit to be something that he wasn't. And then when that thing began to play out with success, didn't like what he saw. So, do we, what did I write as my note here? Do you want to like the place that you've built, assuming that you're successful? And another way of asking that question that's really helpful is, would you work for you? I tell you, get some very diverse answers when I ask that question. I've had guys go, well, I started my business, so I clearly didn't want to work for anybody. So no, I wouldn't want to work for myself. I don't want to work for anyone. Well, that's not going to get you real far if you're trying to hire some people. So would you want to work for you? Number one. Number two, what would keep you there? I have this conversation quite a bit too, because retention is another massive component of this conversation. I've had guys that lose people to go start their own business or to go work for another place. What would keep you at the business that you're building? So what is it going to take to build a business that you would like, assuming you're successful? Number one. Number two, would you work for you, and why? Okay. We need to understand that concept. Now, as it pertains to combating what we may be experiencing as a labor shortage is, do people come to you to work at your organization? And if they don't, why? Is it because we don't have an accurate message out there about who we are that does attract people? Or do we actually have a really great culture? And honestly, we've just not been really good at marketing it or putting that message out into the world. Okay. You can't afford, another reason why this is important is you can't afford to lose good ones. You probably have some people, well, guaranteed you have people working in your organization that are good ones. We like them. We want to keep them. So what's going to keep them when this expert or amazing employee you have gets solicited by somebody else for a 5% raise. I can't remember where the study came from, so I apologize. But the number one career advancement technique for, I think it was millennials in the, like, I think this study was from like 5 years ago, was moving to a different company. That's how they got raises. That's how they're getting promotions. That's how they're advancing their career, not by moving up inside their current company, but because another company identified them as being a real rock star and said, hey, we'll give you all the stuff that you want if you come here. Very, very critical component. So this purposeful, meaningful, authentic culture and intention plays itself out in why you want to do that through. These are kind of like the 3 bullet points I'd come up with in thinking about this concept. Like I said, moving really quickly. Now, how does this translate? How this translates is when you go to build your employer branding. I've heard of companies that had a separate website, literally a full separate website for recruiting. And that was the website that they used when they put out ads, when they tried to bring people in. It looked different because it faced the people they wanted to bring on their team, not people they wanted to sell their services to. And so that branding is going to be really critical when you work with a company like Team Engine. So I know Danielle knows a few of those key points as well.
Yeah, the first thing that people are going to do when they are job searching and considering your company is Google it and see what comes up. They're going to Google your leadership names and see what type of individuals they are. And so you can just stand by and let that happen naturally, or you can, take control of that and start asking your employees to leave Glassdoor reviews. You can actually do that in Team Engine. You can automate it to make sure it happens on a somewhat regular basis, or even better, you can tie it to an employee's start date. So after they've had, a month or so on the job, you hit them up and ask for feedback. How was your onboarding experience? And just the simple fact of asking for that feedback is shows the employee that you care about their success, and they're going to talk in the community, and that might lead to employee referrals, that sort of thing. But you're also going to get feedback that you can act on. You're going to get quotes that you can put on your employee, your careers page. And then you can also send them out a message and ask them if they're having a good time working for you to leave a Glassdoor review. All you have to do is ask a lot of times, and that can really go a long way. And so it's what's most important is just to do that on a consistent basis, and not to do it once and never do it again. And so that's one way that Team Engine's tools can really help you out with that, is these kinds of automations that are tied to employee start dates.
Mm-hmm.
I love the component too of using a tool to help some process behind implementing our culture. So a lot of people, there's kind of 2 major components for implementing culture and customer experiences and employee experience. One of them is a mindset. Having a mindset so that people's brains are geared, that reticular activator is on for paying attention to cultural components inside of your business. Now, that's a lot of hard work to get somebody into that mindset, but we can have tools that create a systemic and process driven way of enforcing and reinforcing our culture. And so I love the concept of having something that is built in and just kind of happens automatically with some management to help with that cultural component that will reinforce the mindset we want, so that our people begin to think that way as well, which is kind of like some of the examples I've seen of some amazing cultures and how they played out. One of our companies had a very, very, they had a very caring and loving kind of cultural feel to who they were. And one of the ways that played out is they had a dog culture. This company was about dogs. They love dogs, not cats, dogs. And so they let their people bring their dogs to work. They had dogs running around the office. You can imagine, like, if a client came to their business and they had a kid with them, and the kid just loves dog. This place is just full of a bunch of dogs. Obviously, they're going to be friendly dogs. Otherwise, they're not let. They're going to be not going to be let into the office. This thing translated into them supporting a charity that brought emotional support puppies to hospitals with kids that were dealing with terminal issues. Okay, and they noticed a massive impact from these kids that were stuck in these hospitals getting a chance to have a dog. And they literally helped to support and sponsor bringing these dogs and giving these kids dogs that would really help them through these difficult issues, whether they made them through them or not. And so that created this entire cultural movement and shift inside of their business that translated into the community.
Yeah, I want to just jump in and add, Nathan, that that definitely had an impact on the internal culture. But that's also the type of thing that the media are very interested in knowing about. And that's going to get your company mentioned in the media, in news articles. That might lead to more people going to check out that company, or at a minimum, when, a candidate is doing their research and Googles that company and those media articles come up, wow, this is a company that gives back to the community, that cares about the community. That's a company that I would like to work for. So that all is a part of that, just public employer branding as well.
What I love about that too is it allows people to opt out. I mean, I think sometimes we think about we have to have this giant candidate pool, and yeah, we want that, but we want the right candidates. And so if I'm a person who loves lizards, it's good for me to know that at that company, it's dog people. I need to go find my lizard people, and it's better if we give people a realistic picture of who we are and what we're about, so that they can too make that right decision in navigating, should I apply for this company? Does it feel like a good fit for me too?
Some other quick examples of some of the effects of really building out powerful culture. Your employees are recruiting for you. Now, there's two components to this. Number one, your employees might not realize they can. So number one, let them know. When you're looking for somebody, let your people know, okay? If they do know, are they bringing people to your company? Because I can tell you, when somebody goes, I just bought this pair of shoes and they're amazing, they tell everybody about it. You should buy these pair of shoes. They're great. If your employees are working at your company and they're not actively trying to bring their own friends and family into working for you, we need to put some thought around that. Okay.
I think one of the barriers, Nathan, that I see sometimes in companies that have we have this great referral bonus, but nobody's taking advantage of it. Roz, what's going on there? Why? And one of the things I think back, I draw on my marketing experience as well. We used to do brand activations, and a company that I work for, and we would hire in actors, brand ambassadors to come in, excuse me, and they would help sell the product. So we could have this huge activation, and it's okay, we're selling for Old Spice, and we would hire in these people, and they would come in and they would talk about Old Spice. But these people who we were hiring and bringing in to do these promotions, these brand ambassadors, they didn't just know what to say about Old Spice. We gave them a specific script, a specific hey, here are the things that we want you to know about this company, the things we want you to communicate, the things we want you to know about this role. So it actually empowered them to be able to speak intelligently and in a way that was going to attract the right people. Because sometimes what's difficult for people is it's oh yeah, I know I love where I work, but I don't know enough about this role to know if my friend is going to be the right fit. Right? So really getting clear on that. What are those talking points that you want them to share back? And the other thing I would just kind of recommend too, as an HR coach, is sometimes we can think oh, we got to tell our whole employee workforce about this. And yes, everybody has the right to participate in this employee referral process. However, we can really activate that program when we identify people. Who are those influencers? who are those people within our organization that are specifically really good at championing our message. They're really good and shoulder tapping them to be those activators, to be those influencers out in the community, because they're just going to be more likely to do it. So instead of having this message that's like broadcast to everyone on our team, like, hey, yeah, who do you know? It's like, okay, let's give you some specific, let's identify specific people who we think will go out and actually send that message for us. Let's give them clear talking points, and let's give them a call to action. Like, hey, can you identify 2 to 3 friends by next week that you think could be a good fit for us? Right? Like, give them specifics. We do this in our marketing for our customers. So we need to kind of take that lens and put it on our employees too, that we are asking to participate in this. It's a great way to actually take those programs, employee referral programs, and get more out of them.
And I would add to that, you have to ask, and you have to kind of give them a script or tell them explicitly what you are or are not looking for. But then you also have to make it easy for them to get in touch, right? So what if you've given them, they're talking to their friends and they're interested? Okay, well, let me remember to go back to my desk and send you an email. What's your email address? Let me write that down. Then they send the email and the referral never gets it or whatever. So one thing, I know we have a lot of Team Engine customers on the call today, so they're probably already quite familiar with this, but one thing that we do is you send out a text message through the Team Engine software asking for referrals, and then your employees, all they have to do is say, oh yeah, Barbara, and here's her phone number, she would be great. Then the software takes that information, fires off a text to Barbara and says, Barbara, your friend Roz recommended you for this job. We thought you might be interested in applying. Here's a link to do so. And so from the employer's perspective, you haven't had to do anything other than send out the one text saying, hey, we're looking for jobs, and let all your, or we're looking for employees, and let your employees know. So it's really about just reducing all the friction that you possibly can in that process and making it as easy as possible to get those referrals.
I love that so much, Danielle, because employees who do refer people want to know that you're caring for their friend or family member, whoever they know too. Like, now their name's in it, right? They've got skin in the game. And so it's so critical. Like, if you want to keep people providing those names, you have to follow up on them. And so I just love the ease that Team Engine provides in making that accessible for everyone. So
right. And also reward the behavior that you want to see repeated. So make sure you're giving those referring employees some kind of bonus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Cool. I mean, so a few bullet points to throw in here real quick before I turn you over to Roz. How do you build this culture and this thing that can lead to these results and these effects that you're seeing? Okay. A couple of key ingredients for this. You can jot them down. Number one, you need to have a clearly communicatable vision of where your company's going. It needs to have deadlines. It needs to be specific. It needs to have an end date. In other words, we're going to get to this point by here. And most importantly about this vision is it needs to be something that energizes your team. Because here's the thing, as a business owner or an upper management person, you know what you're going to get if we accomplish all the success we're after. What do they get? So your vision needs to be something that your people go, ooh, I want to be a part of that thing. Okay. So we need an empowering, inspiring vision, needs to have an end date, needs to be specific, and it needs to be something that they can see themselves in. Okay. Number one. Number two, we need to have a company purpose. And this purpose isn't just making money, because that's what every company thinks that they're doing. We need to have a company purpose that's about more than just a job. Because I can tell you right now, that might have been good enough for baby boomers, and it might have been good enough for Gen Xers like myself. But millennials, Gen Y, Gen Z, they want greater purpose. They want actually to feel like they're working towards something that's greater than themselves at the place they spend more time than anywhere else next to their bed. We spend more time at work and asleep than we do anywhere else. Don't you want to be applying your life towards something you believe in if you're going to be spending that much time doing it? So we need to build a company purpose. But we need to have core values. Core values, 3 to 5 Okay. And they should be something I named ours at the beginning of this webinar. They need to be something your people can think of and remember. And if you go, we have core values. If you're saying that to yourself right now, can you name them? About 5% of you probably can, which means 95% of you are going, we have core values. It's melty cheese and be good to your neighbor. And I don't know. You need to be able to name them. And these core values are a standard of behavior that we expect that everybody is exemplifying and trying to live up to. Last but not least, we need to have a mission. Now, Contractor Coach Pro sees this a little bit differently. We don't really see mission from the standpoint of a mission statement. We see mission as an objective that we're trying to reach in the next year. And I'll be honest with you, I would brand it. I would make t-shirts and sweatshirts around our mission for this year. And then I would communicate, here's what we're going to do in the next 12 months. That is because our vision is generally going to be a little further down the road. That mission is specific and it's got 12 months and we want everybody rowing in that same direction. Combining those things is what's going to help you build out this culture. Like I said, I didn't want to hog all the time because I can definitely do that. Yeah, I'll let Roz jump in and talk a little more nuts and bolts in your, unless you guys have some comment on that component as well.
No, I love that, Nathan. And I think actually talking about your mission is a great segue into what I want to talk about, which is purposeful hiring. I think really understanding your goals as the company is always the starting place for purposeful hiring. I've kind of over my career in HR really identified that anytime I'm hiring, even if I'm about to backfill for a position that I already had, I start by going back and assessing what are the needs of the organization first, what are the role needs then, and then last, who are the people that fit that role? I always follow that process. I start with the organization because a lot of you probably know 3 months, a lot can happen, right? So even though I had that position and now I'm going to be hiring and it'll probably take me some lead time to get that person in the role, by the time I'm there, I need to be able to know, like, is this still going to make the impact that I originally set out for that role to make? And have the duties and the details of that job changed? Does it make sense for what we need for our future, for that mission that Nathan talked about that we're after, the sustainable growth that we're looking for? Sometimes we get in this habit of just like rinse and repeat, right? Like, oh, I already have that job description, so I'm just going to reuse that job description. And it's like, yeah, I know that like 50% of that job description doesn't actually apply, but whatever, we'll worry about that when the person's here. Then we'll talk about that. Yeah, it's not really that job. Or how many times have I seen people get hired for a job, they're in the organization, and 2 months later, their job has changed. And they're like, this isn't the job I signed up for. What happened? This isn't the job that you hired me for. And it's because the people who were hiring them didn't take the time to proactively think ahead and understand, how is this job shifting and changing? And so they couldn't communicate that to their hires. So we always need to start first with really understanding what are the needs of our organization. We may need to rewrite some job descriptions. We may need to remap some roles and identify who's going to be responsible for what for today and how is that going to change in the future. We have to be kind of that futuristic thinking, and we have to be strategists in thinking about what are the steps that are going to be needed from our organization from a people standpoint in order to accomplish those goals. So I always start from a goal standpoint and I kind of work my way backward. And so when I'm thinking about goals and I'm really trying to understand the right roles to hire for, one of the things I love to do is I love to role map. It's simple. Basically, I'm just taking a department. I'm thinking through what are the responsibilities of this department, and then who is responsible for them. Who's responsible for them today? Who should be responsible for them, right? This is kind of that right people in the right seats. Identifying, like, does it make sense for this role to exist this way? Now, one of the hangups I see here a lot in organizations is it's like, well, we really would like this role to be this, but it's actually too complex for the person who's doing this role right now. So we leave roles in a state that has outgrown that role. Our company's outgrown the look and feel of that role, but because of the person who's in that role, they don't have the capacity to grow. So we steady as she goes. This is it, right? Now that's challenging when we think about growth, right? So what we need to do then is, again, we need to kind of go through and assess what is the reality of our organization that we need. And we may need to help other people within our organization transition into different roles. That doesn't mean we get rid of that person and they have no use to us anymore, right? But we need to maybe rewrite some of those job responsibilities and duties and remap them, so that we can make sure that when we are hiring for those roles, they're the right fit for the organization and for the future. So I love to start by just kind of identifying, okay, what's the actual role need? Now, does the person that we have in that role, is it a fit? And who else do we have in these roles? What does our team look like? If we've got a lot of really great executors in this particular role, and they're great, but we need some strategic thinking, or we need some implementers, we need to be thinking about that too, kind of rounding out our organization based on some of those skills and those needs. So I always start from organizational needs, then the role needs, and then the person. Now we find the right person and the right fit. And again, sometimes that does mean really taking an honest look at who do we have on our teams right now, and do we need to shuffle some things around? A lot of times employees, you'd be surprised, like they can be, if you communicate this in the right way, they can be really excited about that. Right? This means transition in my job. This could mean growth. This could mean opportunity. This could mean that I'm finally doing the things that feel natural and they come well for me, right? I'm succeeding in my job and I feel confident in my skills, instead of feeling like, oh, they really want me to do this thing that I don't have the capacity for. And that's just not me. Like, I'm never going to get there. That's a hard position for your employees to stay in. So we really want to be able to just kind of take an agile assessment of our organizational needs each time we're looking at our hiring. And from there, we really want to start to understand, okay, what can we afford? What can we afford? An employee cost analysis is a great starting place for this. And I'll kind of talk about appropriate compensation too. There's some really great tools out there to help you identify what is compensation like in your area. But again, you can't identify the right compensation if you don't have clarity on that role first. So many times I see companies just pull a job description off of the internet, right? It's like, oh, my job description, I need an accountant. What's an accountant do? I don't even know. Let me just pull that out, right? And so they're grabbing these job descriptions that don't match the needs of the organization. And this is where that role mapping process, if I'm listing out, these are the duties that I need in my organization, when I bring that accountant on, it may look a little different than a typical accountant role. But it's clear that this is what they're going to do at my organization. This is what an accountant here at CCP looks like. This is what an accountant here at Team Engine or Phoenix Fire or Yellow Glow, right? This is what our accountant looks like here. People now can apply for a job that is what they want, right? It's not just this abstract, like, I think this is what I'm going to do. It's clear, okay, I know that when I come into this organization, this is what my job is going to be. Now, this is huge from a retention standpoint too, because it's like, okay, great, I'm coming in, there's clarity there. I can succeed in this job because I know what is expected of me, right? When people know what's expected of them, then they have the opportunity to actually perform. So it's critical to your team performance and to your retention. So really getting clarity on, okay, when I write this job description, sure, use those Glassdoor ones or Monts or whatever as your starting place, but don't let that be your stopping place. These templates that exist, they're lacking because they're not customized to your organization. So you need to take the time as a recruiter, as a hiring manager, to identify where does it deviate from your organization. Once I have that beautiful description, now I can start to assess compensation. I need to know what I'm hiring for before I know how much I should be paying for that role. And what kind of professional, what level of professional do I need? Do I need somebody who's, going to have, I'm going to be able to come alongside them. I'm going to do a lot of training with them. I'm genuinely available for that. I see a lot of people that are like, oh yeah, I want somebody green so I can shape them the way that I want them to be in our organization. Okay, tell me about your training plan for those people. Oh, I'm really busy. We haven't trained in like years. Okay, how's that green person going to do for you? right? If you can't be present with them to shape them, then you probably shouldn't be hiring somebody that's in that role or in that mindset of, somebody who you're going to shape. So we have to be realistic again about what can we even provide for these people. So, okay, maybe I need somebody who's a little more intermediate, or maybe I really want somebody who's going to come in. They're going to use their experience to help develop this arm of my business. I want somebody who can come in and help define SOPs. We wish we had a process. Nathan talked about processes earlier. Like, I wish we had a process for this department, but we don't. And so maybe I really need to hire somebody who has that process mindset. Danielle, would you mind sharing kind of the 4 stages of growth in an organization? Because I think this is maybe really helpful here to think about. As your business grows and goes, do we have that up there? Okay, there we go.
There we go.
Thank you. Thank you so much. As your business grows, your needs in your organization are going to change. And this is something that I think can be kind of helpful to reference and to think about when you're considering who you're hiring and what those needs of your organization are. If I am in this stage where we are starting to really move kind of beyond this friends and family stage, and we want to start casting that wider net, the things that I need then in my organization as a foundation, they start to vary. And one of the things that I'm going to need then is some accountability processes and some performance management. So now I might be thinking like, okay, the person that I'm going to hire in this position, I need them to be able to come in and start to implement processes. I need them to be able to come in, and I need them to define what the job duties of these other positions are. Maybe you need support in that, and you need somebody who has that higher level skill. So we can go through and kind of start to assess what level of professional do I need? And when I know that, then I can start to think about compensation. I can identify, like, is this more of a functional manager position? And what I mean by functional manager is they don't have any direct reports. They don't have any people who they are overseeing, but they are overseeing the direction, the development, the strategies of a department. So this might look like a finance manager. They may not have a person underneath them, or a marketing manager. They may not have a person who's underneath them, but they are guiding and directing a big part of your business. Maybe you're not there yet. Maybe you're back in kind of stage 2 and you're like, nope, we don't need to have kind of this full-blown department yet. I just need some execution. That's going to be more of that coordinator or specialist, that intermediate to entry level role where this person's just coming alongside and they're executing on those tasks. We don't need them to be a big thinker. This also becomes really important from a hiring standpoint and understanding what you want there. Because if you hire somebody in who's like, yeah, we want to get that person that's the manager and they look awesome on paper and hey, all of these things they can bring to our organization. But the reality is you don't need somebody in that strategic thinking role because you already have people doing that or you're doing that. That person is going to flounder. They're going to flounder because they want to be able to contribute, and those contributions, what you need are different. The contributions that you need might be executor level. Like, we need implementation. We need you to get these things done. And so if you instead are hiring an executor, now that person's thriving, right? They're able to come in and they're able to make a difference in their role and they're not feeling underutilized. So we really do want to have a clear understanding of where are we at in the growth of our organization, because understanding these different 4 stages really help us identify what types of people we should be bringing into our organization. One of the biggest differences that I see is when we kind of move from that stage 3 to stage 4 that you see here, where we're starting to specialize in our roles. So, back at stage 2, stage 3, there are a lot of people wearing a lot of different hats. And so again, this is where those like traditional Glassdoor or wherever job descriptions that you're grabbing offline, they don't work because they're usually built by an organization that's in stage 4. They're specialized, right? And so you need to really be able to figure out, like, sometimes the role that I'm hiring for is like 3 positions in one, but they're really only doing, a third capacity of each. So it's fine. I'm not overworking this person. I only have 40 hours for them, but they're doing some HR duties, they're doing some customer service duties, and they're doing some marketing duties, right? So which job description do I pull to write this job for this person? There isn't one. right? I need to customize that. I need to handcraft it. As I grow into this more stage 4, now people are starting to specialize in their roles more. We are getting a little more siloed. And so now I need to be thinking about what kind of leadership levels do I need to be adding to my team so that these people have the support that they need. And I need to be thinking about, okay, now how do I start to break off some of the duties? Yeah, my person who was HR, customer service, and maybe they were doing some accounting and some marketing. Now, as we're growing, I need to start to identify like, okay, we need to delegate some of these pieces. Let's say we're going to delegate HR and finance. So now we have a role that's customer service and marketing for that person. They're kind of staying in those strengths, right? We talked about those strengths earlier. Okay, yep, we can keep them rocking there. And now we're creating a new role that's more of that HR accountant focus. Whole different position came out of identifying what are those needs of the organization and what am I delegating, right? And again, it's specific to my organization. So we really want to take this approach as we're starting to think about those positions. Once we identify, okay, yeah, I'm going to do an HR and a kind of an accountant position. Now I can start to look at comps and identify, okay, what's typical in my labor market for those roles? Since I know this is kind of a hybrid position, I'm going to consider both of these areas. And I'm going to start to think about, okay, like maybe this one's at 35 and this one's at 40. And so maybe I'm going to kind of thread the needle there and offer 37 as kind of my benchmark for this role. So when it comes to identifying your actual cost, though, one thing that I will say is a lot of times people think about salary as kind of being that main hit, right? Like, and sometimes taxes. Those are like, if we're really thinking, then we think, oh yeah, I got to pay taxes too. So I'm going to add this person and they're going to be at 37. And then I got to pay some taxes. So now I may be at like 40. Right. But it's really important to understand what is your overall cost for this hire. What can you afford? One of the things that I love to do for that is doing an employee cost analysis where I start to think through things like what are those benefits that we're providing? What are the costs of some of those? Do we offer health insurance, sick time? All of those things. What are those different areas? Onboarding, my cultural perks. Do I do, team meetings and team events? How much do those cost? Typically I see when I'm going through this exercise with clients, we see close to, a 7 to 10, sometimes even $14,000, $15,000 increase in that overall cost of that employee. Now, I don't say that to scare you, but I say that to help you understand that if you know that total cost, it can actually really empower you to go out and get that person that you need on your team, because you can identify, okay, based on my, my average gross profit, I now know how much more revenue I need to bring in to truly afford this employee. And when I know that, hey, if I know that it's just the difference between like 2 or 3 more sales this year, wow, what a difference that makes in me being able to pull the trigger and say like, okay, let's go, let's get after that person. We can go ahead and we can add this team, and man, that's going to free up so much capacity. That's going to create efficiencies in our company. And so this is absolutely the right choice for us to add to our business. So having clarity on just kind of what that total and final cost is, and what your what revenue you'd need to increase by in order to cover the cost of that employee can really be an empowering metric, an empowering understanding for you as business leaders to make those hiring decisions. Okay, so now we've kind of talked about all the things, all the different areas to think through when you're hiring. I just want to close off with that employee experience, that applicant experience. What does it look like to apply for your company? And this is where I think Team Engine, gosh, you guys have just like figured out so many ways to make this experience better for people. Because I know for me in HR, one of the things that I've watched happen over the years is I've seen people apply for jobs and nobody gets back to them. Right? Like it takes forever for somebody to hear, or they've applied for a job and the company knew right away that they weren't a good fit, but they were just too busy to let them know like, hey, it's not you. Danielle, what does Team Engine have for that? Like how can you solve some of those problems for applicants so that they have a really great experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone knows what they should be doing, what the ideal process looks like, but everyone's is just so busy, and it's a very tedious process to reply to, especially if you're hiring for general labor positions and you're just, flooded with applicants, but maybe half of them aren't good fits. It's very tedious to take the time to reply to every single one of those. And so what Team Engine does is, one, if you're not sure what the process should look like, it'll help you understand the process that you should be using. But then the other important piece of it is making sure that it happens when what's supposed to happen happens when it's supposed to happen. And so, as I've already said earlier today, people talk. Your employer brand is dependent upon the experience that you deliver to people. And so even if you're not interested, there's inside the software, there's a button that says reject. And so then Team Engine takes care of all that communication and lets them know not a good fit, maybe in the future. And it also, in today's tight labor market, the first person to get back to a candidate is often the first time, or the employer who will snag them as an employee. And so Team Engine just automates that, getting back to applicants right away, asking them questions to see if they're engaged and truly interested in working for your company, or if they're just checking boxes and hitting one-click apply on Indeed. So it really just makes sure that the things that are supposed to happen, that everyone knows are supposed to happen, you just don't have time for, kind of automates that and make sure that things are happening when they should.
I love that. And that's, I think, one thing that's interesting about that though, Danielle, is like, do you have a process? And so for some of you, I would just maybe challenge you to take time to write out and map out what are those things that are supposed to happen? Because if you don't know, and you're inconsistent in how that candidate experience looks each time, like, oh, it's a little different if we're hiring for this position or this position. It's okay to have variety, but it should be with intention. Right? It should be, we customize for this role, or we customize for that role with intention, not just because, well, this hiring manager is on it and they do it differently. And so we don't really actually know what's going to happen when they're hiring. So really thinking through, like, what is your applicant process? What do you want that candidate experience to look like? This is where I love to, again, just steal from my marketing background, and a tool, if you don't do it already on your marketing side for your customers' journey mapping, I strongly recommend you start. And then I really recommend you apply that same concept to your applicants. What does the journey look like for your candidate experience? Danielle, you talked about one of the first things that they're going to do is they're going to do that investigation step, that research and understanding step of a customer journey, right? They're going to go in and they're going to look at your website. They're going to look at your Facebook. They are going to look at your Glassdoor. That call out of, hey, get your Glassdoor reviews done, critical. If your people are, or if your candidates are going online and they're seeing your Glassdoor review, that can be a huge difference between whether or not they decide to apply for your company. And if you're afraid of what your employees are going to say, that's a good call out of like, hey, there might be some things that we want to work on here, right? Maybe we want to get a little HR and culture coaching so that we can come in and start to adjust some of these pieces, because you shouldn't ever have to be afraid of what your employees are going to say about you on there, right? So we want to ask for that feedback, and we want those people out there, because part of that applicant journey, that candidate journey, is going to be that research stage. Then what does it look like when they go to apply? Do you even have is it clear? Do they know? I mean, I've seen people that are like, oh yeah, we're hiring. And then you go and you look at their website to help them assess. And it's like, well, where do they apply? How do they do that? Oh, well, they have to send a resume. Okay, well, where's that email address? Oh, yeah, I guess we maybe have that hidden down at the bottom of this thing. You have to go to like 8 different pages and then maybe you find it. Well, that might be part of the barrier, right? Again, you may have that great culture, great experience, but it's like the barrier in that journey was just simply you're clicking the button to easily apply, right? And then to Danielle's point, what does it look like when they kind of get through? Now that I've applied, how quickly does somebody get back to me? Help your people move on. If you don't want to hire them, here's one last little HR tip that I will tell you is I have seen people hold on to candidates that they know are not the right fit for their organization because they're worried that they don't have enough applicants. And that is a mistake, my friends. What you need to assess is your efforts to increase your applicant pool. You do not need to hold on to those people. If they are not a good fit, let them go, let them fly free. They will find the culture and fit for them. You don't have to feel bad about that. That is the way you can love and serve people well, is to give them clarity that they're not being considered. But don't go through this waiting phase of like, I really, we don't really want to hire this person, but we need bodies. No, you don't. You need to assess your applicant process and how you're attracting and recruiting people. That's what you need to do. That's where you need to put your energy in if that's you right now. Okay. Think about how you're attracting people, increase that applicant pool so that you can. And it may take time. It may mean that some things need to slow down in your business in order for you to establish those steps, but that will give you the long-term gain of consistent applicants coming in that are the right fit. And so the last piece I would say is just in that journey, really be thinking about too, what do those interviews look like? Do you give them clarity on when to show up? Think through, what would you want your experience to be? What are some of the areas that you've heard friends, family members, coworkers complain about in their applicant process? And then look at yours and see, okay, where can we change that? How could we make this a surprise and delight experience, just like we do for our customers? How can we do that for our applicants? Where are little moments that we could really make them feel special in that applicant process, where we could communicate our culture and who we are and what makes us special in that applicant process and that applicant journey? So those are my tips, I guess, on what I would say to really think about as you're working through that purposeful hiring stage.
Yeah, and I would just to end, we'll take questions here in a moment, but the to kind of wrap it up, the overarching theme of the discussion today is really just to make sure that you have a process, and even and to write it out and define that process, because you can't improve a process until you're doing it the same way every time. So write down what you're doing, communicate with your team. This is how we're doing it right now. Here's what we want to get to. And then, document that and work towards that defined process. So we still have some participants on the call. If anyone has any questions for Nathan or Roz, feel free to throw those into the chat. I saw someone, Dawn left a comment about using total compensation graphs when you were talking about compensation, Roz, and said, I think they will really help explain compensation outside of base wages. So that was
absolutely. I love that. And I love too, like kind of on that note, like, don't be afraid to share those employee perks that you offer. People often overlook those as being meaningful, but they are critical. Even if it's something as simple as like, yeah, we provide some company gear, Nathan has his on, I have mine on today. Like, we love that stuff, right? Isn't it always fun, Nathan, when you're like, ooh, the new shirt, let's see it, we put it on, employees love that stuff. And so like, talk about that. That is a benefit, a perk that you provide. It may seem simple to you, but it's meaningful to employees. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely include that kind of stuff in the job description, and put a section in the job description that says, what's in it for me,
Mm-hmm.
and employees want to know beyond a 401k match and health benefits. They want to, that's how you can help them start to see and understand your culture and communicate that early on in the process, so that they can self-select and say, this is a good fit for me, or this is not a good fit for me.
Yeah. Yep. And often I saw the note in here about some of those little extra perks. A lot of times we think about benefits in terms of traditional benefits, like your 401k and your medical benefits. But again, this can look like we provide lunch and learns for our team on a monthly basis. That's a perk, and when you add the why, it really gives life to those perks. Like, we provide lunch and learns because we want to see our employees grow. We love bringing them together and having that team atmosphere, right? So adding some of that why language in there can really help people understand why those perks matter. But yeah, maybe team lunches, maybe you do company retreats, maybe you do, Nathan, feel free to bounce in if you've got some that you think of that. I have a client who you talked about community stuff earlier, Nathan. They send their people overseas to help dig wells. as part of their business model. It's part of their community impact. And so maybe you don't go overseas, but maybe you offer volunteer time for your employees and you participate in Habitat for Humanity together. That is a perk that your company offers. So some of those little pieces that you just do, write them down. Share them.
Flexibility on scheduling, I know, is a huge one right now. And actually, we just published a blog post on the Team Engine blog this morning, and it's called the top 5 employee benefits that cost you nothing. And so if you're interested, you might want to check that out. Scheduling flexibility, location flexibility, commuter subsidies, so helping pay for transit and things like that. Those are all helpful to employees.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Great.
Well, I know we are a minute over an hour, so I think we'll go ahead and wrap up so everyone can get back to their workday. Thank you all so much for attending. Roz and Nathan, thank you for your time. And we will be sending out a recording of the presentation so you can watch again and share with others inside your organization. Thank you all and have a great rest of the day.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.